Incredible revelation. Mafia boss stands up for bullied waitress. Exclaims, "You are my blood." Maria wiped the sweat from her brow, the heat of the kitchen mingling with the din of voices in the diner. Every shift felt like a fight for survival, a battle against rudeness wrapped in greasy plates and coffee stains. At 28, this was her life. Long hours spent waiting tables, barely keeping her head above water while her single mother struggled, and her younger brother waited for school to start. The exhaustion clung to her, yet indignity and despair abandoned a sense of normalcy, leaving her aching for respect she rarely received. "Get me my coffee," a customer snapped, before flinging his menu across the counter, the sound echoing like gunfire in her mind. Maria inhaled sharply, a muscle in her jaw tightening. She didn't deserve this. "Sure thing, sir," she muttered, her voice choking under the weight of her forced cheerfulness. She poured coffee with trembling hands, emotions swirling like a tempest within her. In moments like these, she often felt invisible. Construction workers, lawyers, and local businessmen scanned past her, their gazes refusing to acknowledge the life she carried. The tension in the air thickened each time the bell above the door jingled. That night, just when the din began to meld into a rhythmic hum, a rowdy group burst in, animated and loud. They demanded free meals, tossing insults like confetti, their sneering laughter piercing through the ambient noise. Maria's stomach twisted. How many times would she let their bitter comments roll off her back? Each shove felt personal, and anger flickered in her chest. "Excuse me, that's not how we treat staff," she interjected, her heart pounding. But her voice barely made a dent in their relentless taunts. Glaring at their smug faces, her breath sharpened, a growing panic tightening her throat. Why was she still here? An anchor of expectation pulled at her, ripping apart her sense of worth. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As tensions reached a boiling point, Maria's hands trembled when she finally called for help, her voice trembling, a crack breaking the facade of composure she'd always worn. No sooner had the panic surged than a figure loomed in the doorway, a shadow that cast disquiet over the room. Tony, the bear, Russo. The Mafia boss walked in, draped in confidence. It was almost absurd how the chatter ceased at his arrival, replaced by apprehensive whispers. "You are my blood." His voice erupted, a thunderclap silencing the rowdy group. As he stepped forward, Maria froze, incredulous that someone like him would stand up for her. What was happening? Confusion and intrigue coursed through her veins. How could this criminal care about her plight? Yet the fierce loyalty he displayed sparked something within her. A tumult of fear and hope. Caught between admiration and trepidation, Maria wrestled with her next steps. She had worked so hard to break the shackles of her past. Did that mean aligning herself with the likes of a mafia boss? Her dreams of education flickered in the corners of her mind, now tainted with uncertainty. Was she brave enough to trust a man whose life mirrored none of her own morals? Their conversation, laced with hesitations and unspoken truths, held her captive, yet the path of understanding proved perilous. With the din of the diner fading into an echo, Maria found herself at a crossroads. Was she strong enough to embrace this unlikely connection as an opportunity, or would it lead her down a road fraught with compromise? The flickering lights above mirrored her internal struggle as she faced the daunting realization. Change was inevitable, but the cost remained uncertain. Heart racing, she sensed the weight of their fragile bond hanging in the air, raw and uncharted, leaving both their fates tangled in a web of yearning, pushing towards an unknown tomorrow. Maria stood frozen, torn between disbelief and an unsettling surge of resonance with the man before her. To be seen, to be acknowledged in such a raw manner was disorienting. She had fought so long to earn every crumb of respect, and now a mafia boss claimed her as blood. A word filled with connotations she wasn't ready to embrace. Instinctively, she deflected Tony's gaze, feeling the world's weight on her shoulders. Was this the validation she had craved, or a dangerous distraction? The tension in the diner buzzed around her, but within her, a quiet contemplation screamed for clarity. Every snarky comment from customers echoed in the back of her mind, reminding her of her struggles, the relentless grind for mere survival that had defined her adult life. Yet in this moment, Tony's declaration had ignited a flickering spark of ambition she thought long extinguished. "Look, I appreciate it, Tony," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I'm not part of this world." He stepped closer, his presence intimidating, yet not entirely hostile. "You're stronger than you realize, Maria. You fought every day just to be seen. But tell me, where is that fight taking you?" His tone was low, probing, uncovering her fears without malice, but with an undeniable strength. The diner had fallen back into an uneasy silence, the rowdy group enthralled by the confrontation, unsure if they should laugh, leave, or come to their senses. Maria glanced around, her heart racing. For years she had been trapped in a cycle of unfulfilling work, dreaming of a better life, fostering a secret yearning to be more than just a waitress, a filmmaker perhaps, or a community organizer. Yet those dreams had always felt too ambitious for her current station. "Are you really suggesting I work with you? You live in a world I detest, Tony," she challenged. Yet even as the words left her mouth, a sense of inquiry tightened her chest. Was there something to what he was saying? Was she really brave enough to leave her cocoon of survival? "Not work with me, but learn from me," he countered, his brown eyes piercing through her bravado. "We all have our burdens, Maria. Even I have burdens. But we move forward, confronted by what we fear. You want respect? You have to create it." The weight of his words enveloped her, pressing against her insecurities, giving rise to an unsettling revelation deep within. What if she could harness this connection? What if, while aligned with someone vastly different, she could acquire tools to construct the life she desired? A life filled not with the shame of avoidance, but with the empowerment that comes from facing adversity head-on. Suddenly, her internal conflict morphed. This was not merely an offer of protection, but a challenge to redefine her principles and boundaries. She pictured her brother, her mother, the dreams she had kept suppressed. Those dreams didn't have to die just because she faced a formidable opponent. Tony could be her ally, not simply because he was formidable, but because he could teach her strength. "Maybe," she murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not going to grow behind this counter." The atmosphere shifted, a current of possibility flowing between them, both realizing the weight of what was being proposed. But with that exchange came an undercurrent of uncertainty. What would it mean to step into his world, with its own moral quandaries? Could she exist in both realms without losing herself? As the diner's lights flickered again, Maria felt a tug toward both darkness and light. She had a choice to make, and time seemed to pause, leaving her poised on the precipice of an unknown journey. With a deep breath, she glanced back at Tony, determination flickering in her gaze. What happens next? He smiled, a mixture of intrigue and challenge, and replied, "Now, we conquer the fears that bind you." As they stood at that critical juncture, Maria's heart raced with the awareness that she was about to step into a world steeped in morals she'd never considered. Would she rise to the challenge, or would she flounder in the face of her own doubts? Maria's pulse thrummed as she met Tony's unwavering gaze. The weight of his words lingered in the air. This was more than a proposition. It was a lifeline thrown into the tumultuous ocean that had become her life. Each heartbeat echoed her desperation for validation and ambition. But she couldn't shake the shadows of doubt. What could she really learn from this man, one who navigated a world she had always rejected? "What's first?" she asked, the uncertainty slipping from her voice, replaced with intrigue. Tony stepped back slightly, allowing her some breathing room while still maintaining his commanding presence. "You start by observing. Understand that darkness isn't merely evil. It can also be a tool, a means to an end, and how you wield it can either bind you or set you free." Maria swallowed hard, casting a glance toward the diner's window. The sun, dipping low in the sky, sent streaks of gold cutting through the fading daylight. Change was upon her, but the journey into the murky territory he proposed felt perilous. Could she integrate this new knowledge without losing her essence, her values? "Observation?" she asked, trying to claw back control over the direction of the conversation. "Yes. Spend time with me, Maria. Watch how I navigate my world. Then you'll understand the importance of strategy and perception. You're not just a waitress. You're a participant in your own story. It's time you took the lead role," he said, leaning subtly closer, piquing her interest. His words ignited a radical shift within her. She could be more than a spectator, more than someone tethered to the limits of her day-to-day existence. Resilience had shaped her. Perhaps it was time to sharpen that resilience with knowledge. "Okay, I'll give it a shot," she said, each word a tentative step forward. But in her gut churned a tempest, a mix of excitement and trepidation. With that hesitant acceptance, Tony's demeanor transformed, revealing an unexpected gentleness that contradicted his menacing reputation. "Let's start tomorrow. We'll meet at the docks early. I'll introduce you to my world." As she turned back to the diner, a renewed sense of purpose filled her. Could she really tread this new path, straddling the delicate line between righteousness and the dark allure of power? Her brain swarmed with obsessive calculations about the risks and rewards. Yet each step felt lighter under the weight of possibility. The creative, vibrant edge of her hopes floated to the surface of her mind. The night unfolded in layers of careful uncertainty, but with each passing moment, Maria's resolve solidified. She envisioned herself exploring the narratives tucked away in her imagination, the very ones she wanted to film, to share, to transform. What if her collaboration with Tony could serve as a springboard for her aspirations? Yet that thought also bore a heavy burden. Could she shield her ambition against the moral ambiguities inherent in his world? Doubts festered. Could this journey really reshape her into a person of influence without turning her into an agent of chaos? Returning home, Maria slipped into bed, her mind racing with the day's events. The questions spiraled endlessly, but deep within, a note of excitement flicked like a flame waiting to consume. She didn't just want to survive anymore. She wanted to thrive. Morning came with a pulsating energy. Dressing in a simple outfit, she caught the reflection of a woman waiting to break free from her constricted shell. What would it mean to embrace this opportunity? To angle towards power without succumbing to its destructive tendencies? Would she discover the strength buried under layers of self-doubt? Or would she unravel in the face of temptations that lay ahead? As she made her way to the docks, the exhilaration crackled through her veins, like electricity coursing through a wire. Whatever awaited her, there would either forge a path to her dreams or plunge her into darkness. With each step, Maria felt both the thrill of transformation and the weight of uncertainty. The moment fast approached when she would have to confront the truth about what she was willing to become. As she drew closer, the docks loomed ahead, carrying with them the promise of revelations yet to come. What was she truly willing to sacrifice for her new chances? The salty breeze whipped around Maria as she reached the docks, mingling with the smells of brine and industry. The boats bobbed gently, their hulls whispering secrets to the water. There was something electric about the environment, a charge that mirrored her fight-or-flight instincts. Today was not just about learning from Tony, but discovering parts of herself that had languished in the shadows. Unexplored dimensions of her assertiveness, intelligence, and ambition. Tony was already there, leaning against a weathered wooden post, arms crossed, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. He turned as she approached, his expression unreadable. "You made it." "I wouldn't miss it," she replied, attempting to feign confidence. Her heart was a drumbeat of anxiety, but she couldn't let it govern her. "Good. The first lesson is perspective. It's about how you view the game you're playing." He motioned toward the bustling activity on the docks, men loading crates, the clank of metal against metal resounding in the air. This isn't just a job for them, it's survival. Everyone has a role, but only those willing to adapt will thrive. Watch closely and don't forget, appearances can be deceiving. Maria focused on the scene in front of her, her analytical mind turning the raw data before her into potential lessons. Each person had a transaction, a motivation, a desire. Layers upon layers of stories unfolding. With every passing second, she felt the narrative of her own life growing more complex, and she began to question the roles she had been playing all along. "Let's talk to them," Tony said, breaking her reverie. "Know their names, their stories, and let them know you're here to listen. They will respect you for it." Dread clawed at her stomach. Approaching strangers, especially in this gritty milieu, felt alien and terrifying. But this was her chance to break beyond the confines of her former self. "Okay," she said, voice barely above a whisper. She moved towards a group of dock workers who were exchanging animated stories. Tony's presence beside her was grounding. "Introduce yourself first. Let them see you as a human, not just a stranger." "Hi, I'm Maria," she interjected, her tone steadier than she felt. The men paused their conversation, waiting for her next move. She watched their faces turn from curious to friendly with a hint of wariness. Somehow, her self-assuredness took a more resonant shape as she continued. "I'm here to learn and hear about your experiences. What's this life like for you?" To her surprise, their responses flooded forth. Stories about family, struggle, the tug-of-war between loyalty and personal ambition. They wrestled with dreams that felt impossibly distant, just like hers. Maria found herself listening intently, each tale igniting sparks of connection within her. "See? It's about building bonds," Tony murmured, almost to himself. "You empathize with them, and then you leverage those relationships." Leverage. The word felt sharp against her tongue. Could purposefully gaining a connection with these men be morally acceptable? Or would it lead her into a web of manipulation? "Every relationship can be a tool if you understand it properly," Tony replied, sensing her internal struggle. "It's not about using people. Rather, it's about creating alliances that can help you climb and navigate this world." Each word forced her to recalibrate her perceptions of these new moral frameworks. What power would she be willing to yield? Maria could harness their stories as motivation, yet the implications of leveraging her connections nagged at her conscience. As the day wore on, the stark realities of this life seeped into her mind. With each interaction, she began to see beyond the surface intricacies. Yet, every insight also forced her to confront her own motivations. What would she be willing to sacrifice to ascend this turbulent social ladder? As the sun sunk below the horizon, casting shades of indigo across the water, Maria realized this was no ordinary lesson. It was an awakening. She was not the same hesitant woman as yesterday, but which version of herself was she growing into? Glimmers of determination pierced through her doubts. Was she holding herself back? What if those very sacrifices that seemed daunting could be the foundations of the power she craved? With newfound clarity, she turned to Tony, ready to voice her swirling thoughts. Just then, a distant commotion erupted at the docks. Shouts mingled with the sounds of panic. Maria's instincts jolted, recognizing this could be an opportunity to act, a test of what new skills she had begun to forge. But what would she choose as her response? The observer or the participant? As she moved toward the chaos, she felt the stirring within her shift from fear to resolve. "Tony, what do we do?" she asked, adrenaline coursing through her. "Let's find out what we're really made of," he replied, moving ahead. The rapidly unfolding situation on the docks pushed Maria to confront the very essence of power. What choices would define her, and how would she reconcile her old self with the emerging woman before her? The answers lingered just beyond reach, waiting for her to seize them. The chaos erupted with an urgency that tightened Maria's chest. Her instincts screamed at her to freeze, yet her body propelled her forward, guided by a sudden surge of determination. The frantic shouts grew louder as she and Tony approached the scene. A crowd had gathered near the dock's edge, an uprising of conflicting voices rising above the crashing waves. A pair of dock workers, their faces flushed with anger, confronted a third man who seemed outmatched. His shoulders slumped beneath the weight of their fierce accusations. Maria could see that he was terrified, and the realization pricked at her conscience. "Stay close," Tony instructed, eyes narrowing at the situation. He stepped forward, confidently navigating through the throng. "Let's see what's happening." Maria followed, heart pounding. She felt raw energy flowing through her as the adrenaline pushed her past the threshold of fear. Each step stripped away her doubts, revealing a determined version of herself wearing the skin of an outsider, an unclaimed territory of emerging power. An older man, arms tattooed with ink and stories, stood defiantly before the injured party. His booming voice resonated with authority, demanding respect. "You think you can just walk away after what you pulled? Enough." The standoff escalated, and Maria, drawn to the victim's plight, stepped forward, her voice emerging steadier than she anticipated. "What's going on here?" The crowd momentarily shifted its attention towards her, confusion etching their faces. For a heartbeat, she felt the weight of their expectations. Would they dismiss her? But she recalled the dockworkers' stories about loyalty and shared struggles. The older man's posture softened slightly, wariness flickering in his eyes. "This kid here thinks he can snitch on us without facing the consequences." Maria held the man's gaze, surprising herself with the fervency behind her words. "And what consequences are you imposing? He's just trying to survive, like all of us." The air thickened with tension. The momentary silence swallowed her boldness whole. Doubt crept back in as she grappled with her decision to intervene. Was she overstepping her boundaries as an outsider? Did she possess the right to reshape these alliances beginning to form around her? Tony appeared beside her, squared with purpose, inadvertently radiating strength. "She's right. Everyone deserves a chance to defend themselves, even in a tough environment like this one," he added, his voice calm, yet infused with authority. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift. Maria felt emboldened, her sense of righting wrongs binding her to the scene. She realized that aligning herself with the values of justice and camaraderie gave her a potent weapon. It was more than survival. It was standing up for others, someone who could not speak for himself. The tension settled uneasily, and for the first time, the older man hesitated, glancing at his buddies. He weighed their likely reactions. Would they follow his lead or walk away? "Listen," Maria continued, her voice gaining newfound strength. "We all have stories that connect us, and fighting amongst ourselves helps no one. Isn't there more at stake here? Your dignity? His safety?" The older man's simmering anger faltered, his eyes flickering towards the dockworker in distress. In that instant, Maria recognized the beginning of a transformation within herself. The desire to be more than a passive bystander surged through her, melding with a commitment to effect change, not just for herself but for others. As she stood resolute, waiting for the older man's response, a crack in his demeanor revealed a glimpse of vulnerability. Had she discovered her own potency in this act of defiance? Could this be the moment that reshaped her purpose in this gritty world? The crowd held its breath. The docks around them shifted, the power dynamics altering in a breathtaking twist, and she knew, no matter the outcome, this was merely the first step in her evolving journey. A clap of thunder reverberated in the distance, reminiscent of her own heart racing. But beyond the electrifying tension lay an unsettling knowledge. The farther she ventured into this world, the more she must ultimately confront herself. With uncertain clarity, Maria turned to Tony. She wanted to know if she had done enough, if she had been true in her choices. But the answer remained suspended in the charged air as they awaited the outcome, both for the dockworkers and for herself. What other facets of power would challenge her integrity as she continued down this path? Would she find that power could be both a weapon and a shield, demanding real sacrifices from her in return? The older man's gaze flickered uncertainly as silence enveloped the crowd, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Maria held her breath, acutely aware that this moment was not merely about the situation at hand, but also about her own burgeoning identity. The glances exchanged among the dock workers signaled a complexity she hadn't anticipated. Where power games were in play, vulnerability sparked an unpredictable reaction. Maybe he thinks he can just slide into our territory and play us like fools. The older man's voice broke through the quiet, laden with contempt. Yet it was softer, less combative. Maria seized on the moment, determined to navigate the treacherous waters of this confrontation with courage. "This isn't just about territory," she urged, each word punctuated with conviction. "It's about who we choose to be in front of each other. Both of you are respected here. Being a bully doesn't earn you that respect. It erodes it." She sensed Tony's steady presence beside her, a stabilizing force, as they confronted a shared challenge. The older man's hardened facade softened further, perhaps grasping the implications of being a leader, the responsibility to guide rather than intimidate. Maria felt the weight of her influence inching closer to permanence, yet it terrified her. "Look at him!" Maria gestured toward the cornered dockworker, whose shoulders trembled slightly, a resonating embodiment of fear amidst aggression. When did we stop caring about one another? When did we forget that we're supposed to be on the same side? After a heartbeat that felt like eternity, the older man finally slumped his shoulders in resignation. "You're right, kid. I lost sight of what matters. We're in this together, or we crumble." He redirected his gaze towards the young man. "I owe you an apology. We all make bad choices under pressure, but that doesn't excuse bullying." Murky waters had begun to clear, and Maria could see the first glimmers of understanding bridge the divide. The onlookers shifted, their expressions oscillating between surprise and a dawning camaraderie. A seed of change had been planted, and she felt a warmth blooming inside her, something unfamiliar yet exhilarating. But as the confrontation dissolved, Maria wondered about the fragility of this newfound solidarity. Would it withstand the pressures of their environment? Or would it evaporate, lost to the harsh realities of life at the docks? She pondered the dualities of influence, the power to uplift, and the responsibility to follow through. As she and Tony retreated from the center of the skirmish, a slow hum of conversation began to rise among the crowd. The dock was alive again, not merely with the sounds of labor, but with something she couldn't quite name. It was a sense of kinship, the promise of forging connections. "Your delivery was impressive," Tony said, his tone a mix of admiration and curiosity. "How did you feel standing there, daring to confront them?" The question opened a door to introspection. "I don't know," Maria confessed, reflecting on the fear that had initially gripped her. "There was a moment when doubt nearly swallowed me, but then I could not walk away. Their fight felt like mine." "Abandoning your position isn't an option anymore, is it?" Tony countered, his eyes intent on her. "You're not just a witness. You've shifted a balance." Could she sustain this newfound strength? Maria's mind churned with possibilities, confronting the reality of her growth as she stepped into the dock's vibrant hustle. She realized that with every unjust situation she encountered, the distance between who she was and who she wanted to be diminished. Yet, lurking beneath was the understanding that every step forward might demand more from her than she was prepared to give. As they walked away from the scene, something inside her began to ripple, an unsettling reflection on her emerging identity as a harbinger of justice. She was committed to this path, but what other choices would she have to make to defend those values? The distant roar of engines filled the air, and a thought blossomed amidst her introspection. The true challenge had only just begun. Would she rise to face the darker forces at play? What sacrifices would be necessary to sustain her resolve amid the threats looming over the docks? Each question felt like a weight on her shoulders, but deep down, a fierce determination ignited within, ready to explore whatever came next. The creaking sound of the dock's heavy machinery echoed in Maria's ears, while she processed the rapid changes in her environment. Tony's words lingered, a constant reminder of the new responsibilities she had embraced. With every stride she took, she felt more grounded yet aware that she was walking on a tightrope, balancing her willingness to fight for others against the risk of alienating herself from the very people she wanted to uplift. Days passed, and each encounter at the docks began carrying an undercurrent of tension. The whispered conversations shifted from casual labor banter to hushed discussions about the older man's newfound approach. Maria, now a focal point for potential change, found herself navigating a labyrinth of expectations. The dock workers were curious, searching her face for validation, for a sign of how to proceed in this fragile new order. It was during one of their lunch breaks that she realized how deeply her words had resonated. A group had formed around her, eager to discuss everything from safety protocols to injustice in their workplace. This feeling of camaraderie stirred something powerful in her chest. She wasn't just participating, she was leading, albeit in a way she had never expected. "Can we count on you to speak up if something goes wrong?" one dock worker asked, his eyes wide with a mix of hope and anxiety. Her heart raced. This was it, a defining moment. The weight of their expectations pressed heavily upon her, but rather than draw back, she leaned forward, tapping into the newfound strength brewing inside. "Absolutely. We need to stand up together," she declared, though doubt gnawed at her. What if her courage faltered when real conflicts arose? How could she sustain this momentum with the risk of failing her peers looming overhead? Yet the thought of retreating from their eyes felt far worse. As lunch ended, Maria took a moment to gather her scattered thoughts. She felt both exhilarated and frightened. The recent confrontation had illuminated her path, but also left her with a daunting sense of obligation. The churning uncertainty nagged at her to question if she could maintain this fragile balance of being their voice while carving out her own identity. Later that evening, under the harsh, flickering lights of her cramped apartment, Maria reflected on the powerful impressions left by her recent bravery. She thought of the young dock worker, the one she had stood up for, and felt a deep sense of responsibility for his fate. Would she be able to check in on him? Ask if he felt any safer? Sitting at her small table, a simple piece of paper in front of her, she grabbed her pen. An idea started to form, one that could unite the dock workers, not just as individuals with grievances, but as a cohesive team capable of inciting real change. She scribbled out the framework of a proposal for a meeting where workers could bring forth their issues safely and openly. The more she wrote, the clearer her vision became. This was not merely about mediating conflicts. It was about forging a movement towards safety and respect in a hostile world. But as she took a step back to assess her intentions, her resolve flickered. The shadows felt deeper and darker. One wrong move could unravel everything she was trying to build. Would others embrace her initiative, or would they see her as overstepping? In that moment, she understood the risk of standing at the forefront. The weight of leadership was heavier than she had anticipated. Would her willingness to champion this idea expose her weaknesses instead of solidifying her role? As she closed her eyes, the weight pressed down, and the unanswered questions gnawed at her mind, leaving her restless. A loud knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts, sending her heart racing. Who could it be? Was it the very forces she was trying to confront, coming home to roost? Or had someone come to challenge her resolve just as she was beginning to forge a path forward? Maria hesitated at the door, her heart pounding in her chest like a caged bird desperate to escape. The knock had sounded authoritative, as if the world outside her little haven was demanding entry. Heart racing, she took a deep breath, the weight of expectation swirling in her mind. Gathering her resolve, she opened the door. Standing there was an older woman, gray hair pulled tightly into a bun, and dark, weathered hands clutching a stack of papers. Her eyes were sharp, piercing, demanding to be noticed. Maria recognized her immediately, a woman who had worked the docks for decades and known struggles that had left indelible marks. "Mrs. Delgado," Maria greeted, surprised by the urgency radiating off the woman. "What brings you here?" "I need to talk," Mrs. Delgado replied, sensing the echoes of tension from behind Maria's composure. "It's about what's going on down at the docks." Maria stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. Once inside, Mrs. Delgado wasted no time. "You've stirred something among the workers. They're talking about you. About what you said in the break room. They're starting to believe they could actually be heard." The ice in Maria's stomach began to thaw just slightly at the affirmation. "I'm just trying to do what's right, but can they really trust me? Can I trust myself?" Mrs. Delgado studied her, letting the silence settle between them. "They need someone like you, Maria. Someone willing to speak up and stand firm. But you must be prepared. This path isn't easy." The older woman's words hung in the air, both a challenge and a warning. Maria felt a twinge of fear. The unknown terrain that lay ahead was sometimes dizzying. Was she equipped to lead them? "Then help me," Maria blurted out, the vulnerability woven into her statement surprising even herself. Mrs. Delgado's brows furrowed with resignation, but her expression softened. "Help you? You must understand. This is wading into waters fraught with peril. We've seen what happens when someone stands out. You have to be aware of the risks." Maria's pulse quickened again at the implication. Having been a timid observer for so long, stepping into leadership had felt daunting enough. To confront hidden opposition was terrifying. But in that moment, clarity emerged. What if her journey was about more than just her fear? What if the courage she sought wasn't just for herself, but for those who had repeatedly been silenced? "With your experience, we can make a plan." Maria leaned back, her fingers brushing against the proposal she had drafted earlier. "Together we can create a safe space, a meeting where they can voice their concerns and share their stories. We can unite them rather than allow the fear to divide." "Unity doesn't come without consequence," Mrs. Delgado warned, searching Maria's gaze for signs of cowardice. "And you're at the heart of it all now." Maria felt a surge of determination weave into her resolve. "Then let's do it. Let's call the first meeting." The challenge fired her spirit. This was the moment. Not just a call to action, but a chance to confront the creeping shadows that had threatened to swallow her resolve. As she penned a note to summon the workers for that first meeting, she felt both elated and terrified. The weight of their trust would soon be placed upon her fragile shoulders. Would she be able to carry that burden, or would the fears she swore to fight against find a way to silencing her too? Just as she sealed the note, a flicker of movement from the window caught her eye. Standing beneath a streetlight across the way, a figure watched her every move, the shadows preserving its identity. This time, it felt less like someone coming to confront her, and more ominous, like an ominous reminder of the stakes that loomed ahead. Maria's heart raced as horror and determination intertwined within her. She realized the path she was choosing was harsher than she had anticipated, and as anxiety curled in her gut, she knew the moment had come to decide once and for all whose side she was truly on. Would she cower in fear, or would she rise to the occasion? The choice lay heavily before her, the decision thundering in her mind. Maria stared at the lined notepaper that felt more like a banner bearing her fears than a promise of unity. Each stroke of the pen had drawn her deeper into a battle she hadn't signed up for. Yet the thought of relinquishing the opportunity to become a voice for the workers felt like an admission of defeat. She took a deep breath, steadying herself against the creeping doubt that threatened to unhinge her resolve. The figure outside shifted, and Maria's attention snapped back to it. Was it possible someone had become aware of her ambitions? The thought prickled at the back of her mind like ice. Fear was a powerful adversary, but it had also fueled the fire of her convictions. Maria. Mrs. Delgado's voice broke through her reverie as if she had read the turmoil simmering just beneath the surface. You need to focus. This is not merely a meeting. It's a declaration. The urgency in her tone brought Maria back to the present. A declaration, Maria echoed, tastes of bitterness at the edges of her mouth. It felt like a proclamation she had never intended to make. The weight of responsibility bore down heavier than she had predicted. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? The older woman leaned in, scrupulous eyes piercing Maria's uncertainty. You already have one powerful ally, your own fear. Turn it to your advantage. Understand your doubts, but don't let them define your actions. Fear can sharpen your instincts, can drive you to prepare more thoroughly than you ever thought necessary. Maria considered Mrs. Delgado's words, the realization striking her with ferocity. Fear wasn't only an obstacle, it could be a catalyst. Perhaps all those evenings spent second-guessing her capabilities had readied her for this moment. This introspection needed to translate into action, not for herself alone, but for everyone at the docks counting on her to articulate their frustrations. What do we need? She asked, no longer just questioning her courage, but pouring determination, green and fresh, into her voice. They need to know they are not alone, that their experiences matter, Mrs. Delgado said. We can prepare them to speak their truth with clarity. Draft an agenda. Anticipate their concerns. You'll be the beacon that guides them through the treacherous waters ahead. The image resonated steep in her mind. Maria had always considered herself just an ordinary worker, someone occasionally overlooked, usually underestimated. But the potential to foster a new sense of empowerment gnawed at her, slowly infusing her with a burgeoning sense of purpose and ambition. She began crafting an agenda, each line an arrow aimed at the fears of the workers, aiming to pierce them with solidarity. Maria jotted key points, highlighting common grievances, struggles faced, questions that needed answering, and potential solutions to forge ahead. As she meticulously shaped the framework, the ominous figure outside faded from her conscious mind. It was as if each stroke of her pen fortified her resolve, transforming anxious uncertainty into calculated intent. Yet the shadow still hovered, lingering on the periphery, unseen but ever present, a reminder of external threats. She had come to realize that this new chapter in her life would not just be about organizing a meeting. It was a step into her own arena of conflict. Maria, this isn't just about giving them a voice. This will require you to stand strong, to absorb pushback from those in power who won't give up without a fight. If you falter, then... Mrs. Delgado paused, concern etched on her features. We need to prepare for backlash, not only from the bosses, but potentially the very individuals you hope to empower. Her heart sank slightly at the weight of that truth. Would allegiance crumble under pressure? Breaching the nature of their collective hesitance would need delicate navigation, an openness to not only listen, but also confront each other's doubts head-on. Then let's not just prepare the agenda, let's prepare ourselves mentally. I need to understand what I'll face, Maria concluded, now speaking with the unwavering resonance of one who had just resolved to enter the storms ahead. Together, they began gathering stories, dissecting faults in the current environment, contemplating potential reactions and strategies. With each discussion, Maria felt a shift within, a gradual sculpting of latent leadership that rested unsuspecting in her chest. But as she turned to the agenda with fervor, the figure re-emerged under the flickering light outside, its shadow stretching longer and darker than before. Anxiety crept back. the resolve she had nurtured now juxtaposed against the tangible reality of what lay ahead. The stakes had crystallized around her, and for the first time, she knew. The true battle was just beginning. What would her next steps be when faced with the consequences of her choices? And at that moment, uncertain and charged, she sensed that something significant awaited her just beyond the threshold of her newfound resolve. The time had come to not just lead, but to confront, to challenge everything she thought she knew about standing up for what was right. Would she emerge transformed, or break under pressure? The imminent clash loomed, ready to unveil itself. On the day of the meeting at the docks, Maria stood before the gathering crowd, a mixture of anxiety and determination coursing through her. Her heart raced with the gravity of the moment. The workers had come, their eyes filled with expectation. The agenda she had meticulously crafted rested in her hands, a tangible representation of her newfound purpose. This was not merely an opportunity to share their grievances. It was a chance to redefine their community, to amplify their voices in a world that often silenced them. As she cleared her throat, she glimpsed the faces of familiar dock workers. They were hopeful, yet skeptical, their trust hinging on how she would navigate this pivotal moment. She took a breath, reminding herself of Mrs. Delgado's wise words. This was bigger than her fear. She was their beacon, and today was about solidifying that light. "Thank you all for coming," she started, her voice steady despite the tremors of nerves beneath. "We are here to talk about our experiences at the docks and how we can create a safer, more respectful environment for everyone. I want each of you to feel empowered to speak. This is our time." A low murmur rippled through the gathering, and tension hung in the air. How would they react to her invitation to express themselves? She continued, presenting the agenda with clarity, iterating key issues including workplace safety, harassment, and mutual support. With every point articulated, she began to observe nods and subtle shifts in posture amongst the group. A flicker of hope illuminated her spirit. As workers began to share their stories, Maria felt the weight of tradition and fear lifting. Each testimony resonated within her, echoing her own struggles. From tales of near accidents on the docks to the daily humiliations of being understaffed and overlooked, the stories formed an intimate tapestry of shared experiences woven with vulnerability. It was empowering. The careful connections she had envisioned began to flourish right before her eyes. But the moment was quickly jolted. A figure emerged from the shadows, a familiar face that struck a jarring note against the camaraderie. It was the older dock worker, the one who had confronted Maria just days before. Tension crackled as he stepped forward, the collective breath of the crowd caught in a tight hold. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice sharp as a knife. "You want us to air our dirty laundry in front of everyone? These things don't change." Maria's heart pounded, but instead of stumbling back into silence, a new strength emerged within her. She met his gaze, refusing to yield. "I'm here to ensure that we all have a say in how we can make this place safer. Change doesn't happen if we hide our struggles, but it starts here, with us." She felt the energy shift as solidarity rippled through the crowd. Others began to echo sentiments of support, reminding the skeptical worker that they were ready to fight against the injustices they had long endured. Maria's heart soared as she realized how far she had come. This man's challenge was not an obstacle, but a gateway to deeper engagement. The older worker sighed, recognition dawning on his features. "Fine," he relented, crossing his arms in uncertainty. "But if we're doing this, we need to be prepared for the backlash that'll come." "Absolutely," Maria answered, her voice unwavering. "I know there will be challenges, but we must stand together." That was it. Her words hung in the air, a thread connecting them through challenge and resolve. The meeting turned into a rallying cry. Everyone began voicing their concerns, not just for themselves, but in unison for one another. Maria felt a surge of confidence. She proved herself capable of guiding this movement. As the final comments wound down, she stood at the center of a united group. a palpable sense of shared purpose enveloping them like a warm embrace. Personal fears that had once clouded her mind began to dissipate, replaced by a clear vision. She was no longer just a waitress, nor merely an observer on the sidelines. She was a catalyst for change, recognized and embraced by those she had once felt distant from. That night, as they left the docks, Maria felt the wind on her skin, buoyed by the sense of accomplishment. She had conquered not only her hesitation, but had also established herself as a leader. The path was still fraught with uncertainty, but she now possessed tools to navigate the complexities ahead. In that transformative moment, she embraced the confidence she had long sought, coupled with the understanding that to grow, she needed to lead from the front. Her journey had truly begun, and with it, the keen realization that her choices mattered, not just for her, but for all those who had been inspired by her courage. As she locked her door that evening, the lingering thoughts subsided into a quiet determination. Maria knew her fight was far from over. The road would lead through darkness and light, judgment and acceptance. Yet, she had claimed her power, and would embrace each challenge as an opportunity to further evolve. Today marked not just a meeting, but a declaration of her commitment to advocate for others while crafting her own identity, fully aware of the potential repercussions. Life, with its stark realities, now intertwined itself beautifully with her aspirations, igniting a spark that would continue to drive her forward. And with that revelation, of knowing she had risen from mere survival to the forefront of change, Maria was ready to face whatever came next, unwavering in her resolutions. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next incredible emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Maria's journey. Your thoughts matter. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this resolution. Don't wait even one more second to connect with this incredible journey of overcoming and empowerment.